لا إله إلا الله 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 لا إله إلا الله 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 لا إله إلا الله الله الله.
So can you all see this? So the first and most common scenario is husband and wife agree a mahr. Yeah. And the mahr is £5,000. Okay. At the time of the contract or before the contract, yeah, they agree on £5,000 and they get married. So Zayd and Zainab agree to get married with the mahr of £5,000. Yeah. So this is obviously he hasn't paid it yet, they've just agreed. So if they consummate the marriage or khalwa takes place, then obviously the full amount, the full agreed amount will have to be paid, which is £5,000. Yeah. If he dies without consummation, yeah, because once consummation takes place, it becomes due anyway, whether he dies or not. If he dies without consummation, the full £5,000 is due. But if he divorces her without consummation or without khalwa, without consummation / khalwa, if he divorces her, only half the amount will be due. Okay, only half the amount, only half the agreed amount will be due. So Zayd saw Zainab, didn't like what he saw, and he divorced her straight away. Although they agreed £5,000, he will only have to give £2,500. Okay. Now, so what happened was, this is another scenario. I hope that's clear. This is the most straightforward one. Yeah, they agreed £5,000. If they consummate, £5,000 is due. If one of them dies, £5,000 is due. If she is divorced before consummation, only half the amount, £2,500 is due. Now imagine they agree a mahr before the aqd. So they agreed on £5,000. But then after the aqd, they increased it. So to £7,000. So the increase is £2,000. So the new amount is £7,000. The original amount is £5,000. Now, if the consummate or khalwa takes place, the increased amount, which is £7,000, will be due. Yeah. So Zayd and Zainab got married, £5,000. After they got married, Zayd, for he's so fortunate to be married to someone like Zainab, so he says, I'll give you £7,000. She goes, yeah, that's fine. But she has to agree, by the way, because she doesn't have to agree. She could be offended. She could find it quite condescending and say, no, I don't want you £2,000. But if she agrees, then the mahr will be now £7,000. Yeah. So the new amount is £7,000. If the consummate, £7,000 will be due. If death takes place, one of them dies, £7,000 is due. If divorce without consummation takes place, half of the original amount will be due and not half of the increased amount. Yeah. So it won't be 3,500. It won't be half of 7,000. It will be £2,500, which is half the original amount, and the ziyada, okay, is saqita. Yeah. The addition is dropped. And the reason is quite obvious, because if you divorce her, then obviously you want nothing to do with her. So when you give more because you're happy to give more, so only half the original amount will be due. Now, what if no mahr is agreed? Okay, so either they were discussing it and they couldn't come to an agreement, but they wanted to get married anyway, or they didn't even talk about it at all. They just decided to get married without a mahr, or they never even knew that mahr was due. Okay, they never heard of mahr. They got married and they had no idea that mahr is due. Yeah. So if that happens, so because there's no original amount, when consummation takes place, he has to give mahrul mithil. Now, obviously, Abdul Wahid, our student, he translated it as a deserved mahr, which is a perfectly fine translation, but it means the mahr which a woman like her would usually receive. And inshallah, not in this lesson, but in next lesson. Today we're going to stop at this point. Next lesson, we're going to look at how do we determine mahrul mithil. Yeah. So no mahr is agreed. Zayd and Zainab get married. They couldn't wait. They never had any time to discuss the mahr. And then they consummate the marriage. Now they realize, hang on, what mahr do I give you? So the mahrul mithil will be due. Yeah. Or if one of them dies, again mahrul mithil. Now, divorce without consummation, you can't give half. There's no original amount. So he has to give something called mut'ah. He has to give something called mut'ah, which is 3 pieces of clothing. There's one more rule mentioned here, which I wanted to remind you of. And that is, he has to give mut'ah, which is basically 3 pieces of clothing. And we'll discuss this in the last lesson. Unless if the 3 pieces of clothing are worth more than half of mahrul mithil. Okay, so let's say her mahrul mithil is 10,000 pounds. So half of mahrul mithil is 5,000 pounds. If the 3 pieces of clothing are worth more than that, then she will only get half the mahrul mithil. Hope that makes sense, inshallah. Okay, now the final scenario. No mahr is agreed. So Zayd and Zainab get married and no mahr is mentioned. Yeah, but they're married. Then after the marriage, after the contract, they agreed on 5,000 pounds. They agreed on 5,000 pounds. So they consume the marriage, she will get 5,000 pounds. He dies, 5,000 pounds. You may have noticed that consummation, khalwa and death are all the same. So that could have possibly been just one category. So they don't agree on a mahr. Later they agree on 5,000 pounds. Then if consummation takes place, then she will get 5,000 pounds. Death, 5,000 pounds. If it's divorce without consummation, she won't get half the 5,000. She will get mut'ah. So it'll be as though they never agreed on anything.
La ilaha illallah, Allahu Allah.